not only that, everything you said, definitely agree with, but they're in a situation where that it almost helps the case for what we're saying. Like Byram could end up on this team because the offensive firepower is just not really there, at least on paper. Can you make up Paterka's offense in the aggregate and hopefully play better defense? Maybe. But there's a lot of hope going into the season. Not only the hope for that, the hope that UPL can figure it out. The hope that Alex Lyon doesn't have to play a huge portion of games because either UPL's hurt or, just not playing up to snuff and really struggling again. Hoping that if Devin Levi gets in the net, he actually looks like a consistent NHL goaltender and someone that doesn't need more seasoning in Rochester. They're hoping that Jack Quinn has a bounce back. They're hoping that Owen Power comes back and isn't a shell of himself trying to play when he isn't 100% or just had like a really shortened offseason and he just wasn't able to get as much work in. They're hoping that a guy like Kesselring can be a top four defenseman. I think it's possible. They're hoping maybe even Josh Doan could be a top six forward. They're hoping that they play well enough to keep Tuck around. They're hoping that Benson improves offensively because he's probably going to be in the top six. They're hoping that Yuri Kulik can be a surprisingly good center for the second straight year. That's a lot of hope, man. I think that's pretty much where Sabres fans were at this offseason is like you always are going to have to hope for improvement with guys. But as Jason Zucker said, hope is a pretty crappy strategy.
Yeah.
And
I was just about to bring that up too. I'm like, didn't he just say that at the locker cleanup?
And so I think people were really looking for, like, on paper, this is a solidified playoff team. So you have some margin of error. It just feels like the Sabres this upcoming season, there's not a lot of margin for error. They're also hoping that they don't go on a 13-game losing streak, which oh boy, I'm hoping that doesn't happen either. But you want to talk about pressure on these players, pressure on the coaching staff and the front office? Well, it's made because you're hoping for so much. And that's what worries me. Not only the seesaws of, what are you going to sacrifice in your game? And are you going to sacrifice defense? You're going to sacrifice offense, but just the hope that they're going for as well. It's, can I make a case that this team makes the playoffs next season? Yes. Yes, I can. I'm not going to lay it out. That'll be maybe a later episode, maybe, I don't know, middle of August kind of thing. But I can. But it's not the likely scenario. Not even a little bit. Because again, it's just a lot of factors need to go right. So, Walt, I know I didn't really give you anything prompted to respond, but is there anything else that you wanted to add to that before we kind of switch gears?
I think, like I was talking about earlier with kind of how, like, the difference between a talented team and a team that's not that talented. Like, a talented team, if things don't bounce their way, like, their point production or their point, like, kind of range they could get is probably, like, like 95 to 115 points. This Sabres team right now is operating like a team whose range is like 75 to 95 points. Like, if everything goes bad, we'll get our, kind of a 2.0 of last season. Like, if everything goes well, you get like 22, 23, where you're hoping the teams around you in the playoff race like stick to that lower 90s range and you can maybe sneak in. But it's crazy thinking about how the Sabres have one of the youngest rosters in the NHL in 22-23. They're 1 point away from the playoffs. Like, we should be in that team whose point range is like 95 to 115 points, 3 years later. Like, that's like should be like the natural progression of a really young team doing that well. But unfortunately, we're sitting here talking about a team who's probably going to do worse than that 22-23 team. And they're also older than that team. They also have a lot less exciting young pieces than that team. So, I don't know. It's just disappointing.